If you go to class trying to learn, you're probably destroying your learning and killing any chance you have of getting the grades that you want. In this video, I'm going to explain why learning in class is so inefficient, what you should do instead, and how anyone can start applying this strategy to get better grades instantly. We're told our whole lives that we're supposed to go to school to learn, so what makes learning in class so inefficient? Well, the way that most classrooms are run is that there's a teacher up the front presenting content to you, and you're expected to absorb that information without much instruction on how to actually do so. There are so many problems with this that stop students from getting better grades. First, the speed at which a teacher explains things to your class is kind of random and determined by many different factors, including the curriculum, the targets that have been set for the teacher, and the speed of your class as a whole. Even more, teachers are always going to be explaining concepts to multiple students, which means that it's pretty much impossible for them to explain a concept in the best way for you as an individual to understand it. But even worse, because classes move at a random pace, there's no guarantee that you'll be able to get the teacher to explain a concept to you again, and there's no chance that you'll be able to ask the teacher to explain every concept in a class to you. On the other hand, if you happen to understand the content well already, there's no way to skip the explanations for the things that you already know. On top of all of this, the teaching that you get in the classroom is usually just listening to someone talking, which is a very passive form of learning. The thing that makes all of this even worse is that classes are often compulsory. So let me tell you the solution that can make your learning in class 10 times more efficient with very little effort. If you have a passion like games, sport, or music, you'll know that it's really easy to learn things in relation to them. If your favorite artist released a new album, you'd probably be able to tell what style of music it might be, and if it was different from what you were expecting, you might be able to tell why that was the case, even though you never had someone formally teach you that. I play violin, and if you told me about a specific technique that a violinist had developed, I'd probably be able to understand what pieces it might be good for and how it might work without ever having to be taught that. One of the reasons why we're able to learn so well in our hobbies is that we have an existing framework of knowledge that we can use to better understand any new information that comes in. But when it comes to the classroom, we hardly ever learn in this way because we aren't taught to build that framework of knowledge. But this is exactly what can make learning in class so much more efficient and enjoyable. Before you ever set foot into a classroom, you should try to have a framework of knowledge that you can use to filter the new information that you will be taught. When you're taught things in class, you'll be able to fit the information that's coming in into its bigger picture, and then you'll find that you don't get lost in class, you're able to deal with bad teachers that talk about irrelevant topics, and you'll be able to remember everything so much better because it all has relevance. This process is called priming or pre-study, and the amazing thing about it is that I only ever spend around 30 minutes doing it for an entire topic. So now you're probably wondering about how you can apply this in your own life. So let me show you a practical demonstration of how you can apply this to get better grades. So even though I'm going to be studying medicine in this demonstration, make sure you watch all the way through because this will be helpful regardless of what you are studying. Say for example, I have a lecture coming up on ophthalmology, which is medicine of the eye. For example, this class might cover 3 topics: conjunctivitis, cataracts, and glaucoma. What I'm aiming to do with my priming is to create a bigger picture understanding of how these conditions fit in within the entire topic as a whole. So even though the class might only be covering these 3 conditions, then I might still decide to cover some extra conditions on top of that just to make sure it makes sense in a bigger picture. Usually the first thing I do is just collect a list of keywords so it's easy to track what I'm going to be studying. And then the first thing that I do before I look at any resources whatsoever is just have a look at those keywords and think about some relationships that might be between them just based on my existing knowledge. So just based on what I know of these conditions already, I'm thinking that some of them are going to be to do with inflammation, others of them are going to be about degeneration of the eye or vision, and then others might be to do with the buildup of pressure. That's just based off what I know already. Now, this is sort of the point where I'd start to look at some resources, and I'll just be trying to figure out what the relationships are and whether I was thinking about the topic correctly. This is something that Justin Sung talks about a lot in his videos, and I'll basically be asking for each of these conditions why it's important, how it relates to the bigger picture, and how it might relate to other conditions that I'm also learning about. So as I'm reading about this information, I'm just thinking about why it's important and how it's fitting into the bigger picture and whether I've understood the topic correctly. So now I've looked at conjunctivitis, and I know that it is sometimes an inflammation of the eye due to infection and also other causes. I want to compare that to the other conditions that I had here because I know that blepharitis, uveitis, they're all going to be to do with inflammation. So I want to compare and contrast those different conditions. What you can see is that as I'm doing this, every single thing that I'm searching up is in an attempt to clarify one of the relationships or to understand the conditions a bit better so that I can fit it in the big picture. I'm not just reading things for no reason or without any purpose. So it's been around 20 minutes or so, and I've been able to very quickly create this backbone of how I think all of these conditions relate together. So what I could started with was that I was correct in saying that there was changes to the eye, and then I'm now thinking that these can be separated into things like inflammation, and then different things which are more structural and not as much inflammation related. And then when I'm thinking about inflammation, I'm thinking about the location, and then I know in the class we'll probably go into the anatomical locations of where these different conditions are causing inflammation. Then as the class progresses, I'll probably end up writing lots of stuff there. And then I can also think about the causes of these inflammations. And then I know that these things will combine to sort of create the presentation or the clinical presentation that is important for us to know about. And then when I'm thinking about the structural things, here I'm thinking about how the two different causes of how it happens, liquid, which is more to do with glaucoma, and then cloudy lens, which is more to do with cataracts. And I'm not really caring about whether these relationships are 100% accurate at this stage. I'm more thinking about the fact that I'm thinking about the topic and I'm creating this backbone that I can use to think further about the topic with greater accuracy within the class itself. When I actually go to my class, I'll be able to add all of the important details to this mind map and also be able to better ask questions from my teacher about what parts of this that I don't understand, and also be able to better understand all of the information that's coming in the best way possible. One thing you might be thinking is that you can't use this for memorizing details, but I'll tell you that that actually isn't true, and you can find out why in this video here, where I talk about why active recall might not be the best study technique for memorizing and what you should do instead.